For 20 years, my father pretended my grandpa didn't exist. No photos, no stories, not even a name allowed at the table. If I ever asked, Dad would just say, "That man's dead to us." So when he suddenly picked up the phone last week and said, "Tell him to come to dinner, and tell him to bring money," I thought I'd misheard. He sounded cold, calculating. Mom froze, my brother went silent, and something inside me twisted. Why money? Why now? But the biggest shock wasn't the invitation, it was that Grandpa actually came. He showed up at our door, older, quiet, holding a single leather folder. He didn't come for forgiveness. He came with a secret. And when he opened that folder at our dinner table, the truth inside tore our family's perfect little world apart. It started on a Thursday that felt ordinary, until it wasn't. The air outside was heavy with late summer heat, and inside, the tension felt the same. Thick, slow, suffocating. I came home early from work, hoping to relax, but what I walked into felt like a scene from a movie you're not supposed to watch. From Dad's office came his voice, low, sharp, the kind of tone that cut through walls. "Tell him to come, dinner, 7 o'clock, and make sure he brings money." I froze in the hallway, holding my bag like it could protect me. Him? The way he said it made my stomach twist. He only used that tone when he was angry or afraid. Mom sat at the kitchen counter, staring at her wine glass. Her face was pale. "You really think he'll come after all this time?" she asked softly. Dad stepped out, phone still in hand. "He owes us," he said flatly. "He owes me." I'd heard bits and pieces about my grandfather Henry Carter, but mostly through whispers. He was the forbidden topic in our family. Dad used to say, "That man walked out on us and never looked back." But Mom once told me a different version when she thought I wasn't listening. She said Grandpa had been pushed away, not gone by choice. When Dad hung up, he saw me standing there. "Emma," he said, straightening his shirt, "we're having a guest tonight. Your grandfather." My mouth fell open. "Grandpa? That Grandpa?" He didn't even blink. "Yes. He's finally decided to stop hiding. It's about time he paid his dues." Mom tried to interject. "Richard." "Enough, Linda," Dad snapped. "He's coming at 7. I felt something cold ripple through me. It wasn't excitement or curiosity, it was dread. That evening, the house turned into a stage set for a play no one wanted to perform. Mom arranged the silverware twice. My little brother Caleb kept asking, "Why now?" Dad didn't answer. He just kept checking his watch, jaw tight, eyes restless. At 6:58, headlights swept across the living room curtains. At 7, a slow, deliberate knock echoed through the hallway. When the door opened, I saw a man I'd only imagined tall but slightly stooped, hair silver, eyes piercing blue. He wore a beige coat and held a worn leather folder under one arm. "Henry," Mom whispered. He smiled faintly. "It's been a long time, Linda." Then his eyes shifted to Dad. "You wanted me here. I came." Dad's voice was ice. "Let's eat." And just like that, the war I didn't know existed began around a dinner table dressed in silence. I'd never seen my father look so stiff at his own dinner table. He sat at the head, knife and fork perfectly aligned, shoulders squared like a general waiting for battle. Across from him, Grandpa Henry moved slowly, carefully, like every motion was measured. The chandelier light flickered off his silver hair. His hands trembled a little, but his eyes didn't. They were sharp, calculating, but not cruel. Mom brought out roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and salad. She tried to smile, but her hands shook. Caleb whispered to me, "Why is Grandpa here? Didn't Dad say he was bad?" "Just eat," I murmured. The silence between courses was unbearable. Forks scraping plates, the ticking clock on the wall, everything sounded louder. Finally, Grandpa broke the quiet. "This house looks just like my old one," he said softly. "Even the dining room chairs. I remember when your mother picked the same style, Richard." Dad didn't look up. "Don't start with nostalgia. You lost the right to that a long time ago." Grandpa nodded once, calmly. "You still hold grudges like a boy." Dad slammed his glass down. "You left us with nothing." "I left you with choices," Grandpa replied. "You made the wrong ones." The air tightened. Mom reached for her glass, whispering, "Please." Not tonight. Grandpa smiled faintly, turning to me. You must be Emma. You were 8 the last time I saw you. I swallowed hard. I barely remember. That's fair, he said kindly. You were told to forget me. Dad glared at me. You don't have to answer him, but something in Grandpa's eyes made me keep talking. Why did you leave? He sighed. The kind of sigh that comes from old wounds, not old age. Because your father wanted my company more than he wanted a father. He said he could handle it. I trusted him. But when things fell apart, I became the villain. Dad shot up from his chair. You're twisting everything. You ran away when things got tough. Grandpa stayed seated. I signed over everything, Richard. The company, the assets. You wanted control, and you got it. Mom's voice cracked. Wait, that's not what you told me. Dad didn't answer. He just stood there, fists trembling. I stared between them, confusion clawing at my chest. All my life, Dad said, Grandpa abandoned us. Now it sounded like Grandpa had been the one betrayed. Grandpa took a sip of water and looked straight at me. Families rewrite history when guilt gets too heavy, he said quietly. But the truth always finds a way home. He set his fork down with finality. I didn't come for forgiveness. I came for truth. The chandelier buzzed softly overhead, but no one moved. For the first time in my life, I wondered who my father really was, and what he'd been hiding all along. Halfway through dinner, I thought maybe they'd find a way to keep the peace. But then Dad leaned back in his chair, wine swirling in his glass, and said in that dangerous tone that always preceded an explosion, So, you show up after 2 decades with a cheap folder and a guilt trip. What do you want, Henry? Money? Recognition? Or just attention? Grandpa didn't react. He dabbed his mouth with the napkin, folded it neatly, and said, I didn't come for any of those things. I came because you called. The words hung in the air like smoke. Dad's laugh was bitter. Oh, I called because you owe me. You disappeared while Mom was dying. You left us drowning in debt. Grandpa's calm cracked just slightly. You mean the debt from the company you took over? The one I built with my hands? Dad's eyes flared. You mean the company you destroyed with your greed? Grandpa reached into his folder. The rustle of paper suddenly felt louder than the storm of emotions brewing between them. He slid a yellowed document across the table. That's the deed transfer from 1998 signed by me, notarized. You owned Carter Construction the day I walked out. I didn't destroy it. You did. Dad froze mid-motion, his hand gripping the glass so tightly his knuckles whitened. Mom leaned forward, scanning the papers. Her face drained of color. Richard, is this real? He didn't answer. Grandpa went on, voice steady, unflinching. I sold my shares to pay your mother's hospital bills. The rest every remaining asset I put in your name. You had full control. 2 years later, you filed bankruptcy. Then you told everyone I abandoned you. Dad stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. You have no right to come here and humiliate me. You humiliated yourself, Grandpa replied quietly. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Caleb shrank in his seat. Dad? Is that true? Stay out of this, Dad snapped, his voice breaking. You think this old man knows the truth? He's rewriting history because he's bitter. I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Dad, I whispered. Did you really? I said, drop it, Emma. Grandpa's tone softened. You raised your children on lies because the truth hurt too much to face. But I didn't come to fight you, Richard. I came to end it. He pushed the folder closer. There's one more thing in there. Something for Emma. Dad's head snapped toward him. Don't drag her into this. But it was too late. Grandpa's blue eyes found mine. You deserve to know what your grandmother left for you before it's too late. That single sentence made every nerve in my body stand on edge. Because somehow, I knew whatever was inside that folder was about to break this family forever. The moment Grandpa said my name, the whole table tensed. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Dad's voice turned razor sharp. You don't get to talk to my daughter about money, about anything. You lost that right the day you left. Grandpa didn't blink. No, Richard. You took that right away from yourself. Dad's chair screeched against the floor as he stood, towering over the table. You think you can walk in here with your fancy papers and play hero? You left us with nothing. Grandpa stayed seated, calm but unyielding. I left you with opportunity. You traded it for resentment, Mom whispered. Richard, please, just sit down. He turned on her. Don't defend him, Linda. You have no idea what that man did to me. Her voice shook. I know what you told me he did, but maybe I should have asked what really happened. For a second, Dad looked like someone had slapped him. Then he turned away, muttering, You're all blind. He's manipulating you, just like he did before. Grandpa finally rose, slow and deliberate. I was a bad father, Richard. I'll admit that. I was proud, impatient, and too stubborn to see how you were hurting. But I never stole from you. I never lied to you. Can you say the same to her? He turned to me. His gaze softened, but his words cut deep. Emma, you were 8 when I last saw you. You hugged me goodbye that night. Do you remember what your father told you afterward? The memory came rushing back, me crying at the window, watching his car disappear down the road, Dad kneeling beside me and whispering, He doesn't love us anymore. Forget him. I swallowed hard. He said you didn't want to see us again. Grandpa nodded slowly, pain flickering across his face. And you believed him. Because that's what he needed you to believe. Dad slammed his fist on the table, plates rattling. Stop poisoning her against me. But Grandpa didn't raise his voice. You poisoned her yourself when you let lies replace love. Mom covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. Caleb looked lost, eyes darting between them. Then Grandpa said quietly, almost like a confession, I didn't come for revenge, Richard. I came because I'm running out of time. And because Emma deserves to know the truth. He picked up the leather folder again, his hand steady now, as if he'd carried its weight long enough. This, he said, sliding it toward me, belongs to you. Dad's face turned pale. What are you doing? Giving her what should have been hers all along, Grandpa replied. Your mother's last wish. I looked down at the folder, heart pounding, afraid to touch it. Because, deep down, I already knew whatever was inside wasn't just about money. It was about everything my family had been hiding for 20 years. My fingers trembled as I opened the folder. Inside was a stack of yellowed papers and one sealed envelope with my name written in delicate fading cursive, Emma Grace Carter. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Grandpa's voice broke the silence. Your grandmother wrote that before she passed. She wanted you to have it when you turned 18. But your father made sure it never reached you. Dad's chair scraped violently against the floor. That's a lie, he barked, but his voice cracked on the last word. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Richard. Ignoring him, I tore open the envelope. Inside was a folded letter and a small brass key taped to the corner. My grandmother's handwriting flowed across the page like something sacred. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't watch you grow up, but I never stopped loving you. I left a trust fund in your name, money from my savings, not your father's. It's meant for your education and your future, to remind you that love doesn't have conditions. The key opens a safe deposit box at Keystone Bank. Henry will know how to access it. Be kind, be brave, and never let greed define you. By the time I finished reading, my throat was burning. The words blurred through tears I didn't know were falling. Dad snatched the letter from my hands. This is fake. He forged it. Grandpa stood, his chair scraping back slowly. The deposit box still exists, Richard. I never touched it. I knew someday the truth would have to speak for itself. You think you can buy her forgiveness with a few dollars and lies? Dad roared. You ruined my life, now you want to ruin hers? I stepped between them, heart pounding. No one's ruining anyone's life. I just want to know the truth. Truth? Dad spat. You don't understand. That man walked away from his family. Grandpa's tone sharpened. I walked away from your control. You took my wife's inheritance, Richard. You turned it into a weapon. Dad's face went red. That money was mine. Mom's voice broke through the shouting. Richard, stop! You told me it was gone, that his accounts were empty. Dad froze, realizing too late that the mask had cracked. His silence said everything. Grandpa sighed. I didn't come to fight, son. I came to give Emma what should have always been hers. He looked at me gently. You'll find the rest of the documents in that folder. Take the key. Don't let anyone convince you that love should come with a price. Dad stormed out, the front door slamming so hard the chandelier rattled. Grandpa turned to me with sad eyes. I'm sorry, Emma. I never wanted you to learn this way. And for the first time, I saw him not as a stranger but as the only honest man left in the room. The silence after Dad's car sped off was deafening. You could almost hear the walls breathe. Mom sank into a chair, her face pale and empty. Grandpa stood by the window, the night pressing against the glass like a witness that had seen too much. Caleb whispered, "Is Dad coming back?" No one answered. I clutched the brass key in my palm so tightly it left an imprint. Everything I thought I knew about my family felt like it had just gone up in flames. I followed Grandpa outside. He was standing in the driveway, staring at the taillights vanishing down the street. "He still drives like he's running from something," he said quietly. I swallowed hard. "What was he running from, Grandpa?" "Guilt," he said simply. "And the fear that one day, you'd learn what kind of man he became." The summer air was thick, thunder rumbling somewhere in the distance. It matched the storm inside me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make time go backward, but instead I just said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Grandpa's eyes softened. "I tried." He made sure I couldn't. He took a deep breath. "Your grandmother's trust was supposed to give you choices. Your father couldn't stand the idea that someone else, even his own mother, had power over your future." I felt tears sting my eyes. "He lied to me, Grandpa. My whole life." He nodded sadly. "He lied to everyone. Even himself." The sky cracked open with a flash of lightning. I could feel the electricity in my bones. Then headlights flared at the end of the street. Dad's car. He was back. The engine roared as he pulled into the driveway and slammed the door. His face was red, his movements jerky. He was holding a bottle, not full. "Great," Grandpa muttered. "Liquid courage." Dad's voice thundered through the night. "You think you can poison my daughter against me? You think I'll let you take her too?" He stalked toward us, fury in every step. Mom appeared at the door, shouting, "Richard, stop this!" But he didn't. He pointed straight at Grandpa. "You always thought you were better than me. You ruined my company, you ruined my marriage, and now you want to ruin my daughter." I stepped forward, shaking. "Dad, stop! He's telling the truth. I read Grandma's letter." He turned on me, eyes wild. "You believe him over me? After everything I've done for you?" My voice broke. "Done for me? Or done to me?" He froze, just for a heartbeat. The words seemed to hit him like stones. "Emma," he said, his voice trembling now. "You don't understand what it's like to be betrayed by your own father. To watch everything you've built disappear." "You betrayed yourself," I shouted back. "You had everything, and you threw it away because you couldn't stand anyone else being right." Lightning flashed again. The wind whipped through the trees, scattering leaves across the driveway. He laughed bitterly. "You sound just like him. Maybe that's not such a bad thing," I said quietly. For a long moment, no one moved. The storm roared above us, and Dad just stood there, shoulders heaving, the bottle trembling in his hand. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "He always loved you more." I felt my chest tighten. Because I never wanted his money. That broke something inside him. His expression twisted anger, pain, shame all at once. He turned, stumbled toward his car, and slammed the door. The engine started. For a second, I thought he might drive into the night again. But instead, he just sat there, headlights cutting through the rain, breathing heavily, broken. Grandpa walked to me, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. "I came for truth, not war," he said softly. "But sometimes, the truth burns before it heals." I looked back at the house at Mom, crying quietly by the doorway, at the lightning illuminating every scar this family had buried. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the storm, because at least now, I knew what it was made of. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than thunder. The driveway was littered with wet leaves, and the air smelled of rain and regret. Inside, the house felt hollow, like every word spoken the night before had drained it of warmth. Mom stood by the kitchen window, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "He didn't come home last night," she whispered. Her voice sounded small, fragile. "He called once, said he needed time." I didn't reply. I was sitting at the table, staring at the brass key still lying beside Grandma's letter. The edges of the paper were slightly torn from how tightly I'd held it. Grandpa entered quietly, his beige coat draped over one arm, His eyes looked tired, but calm, the kind of calm that comes after you've spent years waiting for a truth to be heard. I should go, he said softly. Richard needs space, and I've done enough damage. I stood quickly. You're not the one who did the damage. He smiled, faintly. Maybe not directly. But I carried my silence for too long, Emma. That's its own kind of guilt. I shook my head. You don't have to go. He glanced at Mom. Your mother deserves peace. I bring too many ghosts into this house. Mom set her cup down and turned to him, eyes red but clear. Henry, she said quietly. I believed Richard because it was easier than questioning him. That's my fault, not yours. He hesitated, then nodded. We all loved the same person in different ways. That's what made it so complicated. And I walked closer. What about the trust? The letter said there's a deposit box. He reached into his pocket and handed me a small envelope. Everything you'll need is in here: documents, access codes, directions to the bank. But promise me one thing. What? Use it for something that matters, he said. Don't let it turn into a chain. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I won't, I promise. For a moment, we just stood there, three people bound by blood and pain, trying to build something out of the wreckage. Then Grandpa reached out and pulled me into a hug. His arms were warm, steady, strong. I missed 20 years of your life, he whispered, voice cracking. But maybe we can still build something real even if it's smaller. I clung to him, nodding against his shoulder. We already are. When he finally stepped back, I noticed the sunlight spilling through the curtains, soft and golden. For the first time, the house didn't feel cursed, just quiet, healing. Grandpa walked to the door, turning back one last time. Tell your father I don't hate him. I just wish he'd stop hating himself. Then he left. Mom exhaled, almost like she'd been holding her breath for 20 years. Emma, she said softly, what are you going to do now? I looked at the key, still warm from my hand, and said, I'm going to find out who Grandma wanted me to be. And for the first time in my life, I finally knew where to start. A week later, I stood outside Keystone Bank with the brass key in my hand. The morning sun reflected off the glass doors, and for a second, I saw my own face, tired, older somehow, but determined. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and paper. The clerk led me to a private room where a small gray deposit box waited on the table. My heart raced as I turned the key. The lock clicked softly, like the sound of a door opening in time. Inside were three things: a stack of documents, a velvet pouch, and another letter, sealed with the same careful handwriting as before. I unfolded it slowly. My darling Emma, if you've come this far, then you've already chosen courage over comfort. The money in this account isn't meant to make you rich, it's meant to make you free. Use it to build, not to cling. The world has enough people who take. Be one who gives. Love, Grandma. My eyes blurred again, but this time, the tears felt light, not heavy with loss, but with understanding. The velvet pouch held a small gold pendant shaped like a hammer, the logo of Carter Construction. Inside the documents were the trust papers, confirming what Grandpa had said. The inheritance was real. Enough to clear my student loans, pay off Mom's mortgage, and still start something new. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with Mom. The letter and pendant lay between us. I'm going to use it to start a scholarship, I said quietly, for students in architecture or construction in Grandma's name. Mom smiled through her tears. She'd love that. We were silent for a moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the rhythm of a house breathing again. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Grandpa. Money can build walls or bridges. You're building a bridge. I'm proud of you. I smiled, typing back. Thank you for coming to dinner. He replied almost instantly. I didn't bring money, Emma. I brought truth. And that was the difference. As the sun dipped behind the houses, the light in the dining room turned golden, just like it had that night, except this time, there was no shouting, no fear, no lies, just peace. Dad hadn't come home yet. Maybe he never would. But for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt sorry because now I knew what he'd lost wasn't just the company or the money, it was himself. I placed the pendant around my neck, feeling its gentle weight. It wasn't about inheritance anymore. It was about legacy, the kind you build with truth, not with fear. That dinner began with greed, but it ended with honesty. And honesty, once spoken aloud, has a way of rebuilding everything you thought was gone forever.